I shut my laptop with a soft click, the kind of quiet finality that came after finishing another long summer tutoring shift. 3 hours of convincing resistant teenagers that algebra wasn't an enemy had left my throat dry and my muscles knotted. I rolled my neck until it cracked, then glanced at the glowing digital clock on the nightstand of our Outer Banks rental. 7:30 p.m., perfect timing for everything I'd planned. The evening stretched ahead with a purpose I'd been preparing myself for. Tonight marked exactly 3 years since Mark's death. 3 years since the fire that stole him away and left me trying to glue together what was left of our little family. I brought the memory box with me on this trip, the wooden case with the brass latch that held everything sacred. His folded burial flag, his firefighter's badge, the crayon drawing Penny made of the three of us, the one she insisted on adding during last year's memorial. I pictured the two of us walking slowly to the beach after dinner, the memory box between us. We'd light candles by the waves, tell her stories about her dad, let the ocean speak where we couldn't. It would be healing. It would be right. I opened the bedroom door already imagining dinner, already smelling the seafood I'd splurged on $400 worth of king crab legs and lobster from the fish market that morning. 20 pounds of premium shellfish. My treat. A special meal before our private ceremony. What I walked into instead nearly knocked the breath from my lungs. Penny was hunched in the kitchen corner, perched on a bar stool too tall for her 9-year-old legs. Her feet dangled above the floor. In her small hands was a paper plate holding a frozen corn dog, one of the cheap ones shoved into the back of the freezer. The kind you grab when nothing else is left. She was biting into it like she was forcing herself to eat, the batter still speckled with ice crystals. It wasn't even warmed up. My daughter was eating frozen food. And only 20 feet away, on the balcony, my sister Brenda, her husband Hank, and their 2 boys were seated like royalty at a private feast. The seafood I bought, the $400 of crab and lobster, they'd cooked all of it without me, without Penny, and were devouring it like animals. Through the sliding door, I saw the mounted shells, the shimmering butter in small ramekins, the corn I'd bought stacked high on a platter. Brenda cracked a crab leg and slid out a perfect piece of meat. Hank had butter running down his face. The boys were laughing, wrestling over the largest lobster tail. They hadn't even bothered calling us Dot. My body moved before my thoughts caught up. I crossed the kitchen in 4 sharp strides, my heart pounding. Through the glass door, out onto the balcony. The humid summer air wrapped around me, thick with garlic and Old Bay. And then I saw at Dot in the center of the table sat the huge stock pot, the one I brought specifically for boiling seafood. It still emitted heat, steam fading into the air. But beneath it, serving as a makeshift trivet, was the thing that made my vision burn white at the edges. Mark's burial flag, the thick, triangularly folded American flag that draped his casket. The flag his captain placed in my arms with trembling hands and wet eyes. The flag meant to be kept sacred, protected, not touched, not tampered with. And there it was, laid out flat beneath the pot, unfolded and pressed beneath the weight. The heat had destroyed the folds. Worse, much worse, the pot had leaked. Garlic butter and crab grease had spilled over the edges, soaking into the fabric, staining the white stars on the blue field a sick yellow-brown. The stain spread even as I stared. Sinking into the cotton dot, my eyes jumped to the memory box on the side table. Its brass latch bent and ruined. Splinters at the edges where someone had forced it open, probably with a butter knife, judging by the scratches. The plastic wrap I used to protect the flag lay torn on the deck. She'd broken into the box I kept on a high shelf. She'd unwrapped the flag. She'd used it as a damn pot holder. What are you doing? The words ripped out of me as a shriek. I couldn't rein them in. My hands shook so hard I had to clench them. That is Mark's casket flag. How dare you? How dare you use it for that? Brenda finally looked up, calm and bored. Butter coated her fingers. She licked each one before replying, "Oh, please, Florence." "Relax." She flicked her wrist dismissively. "I couldn't find a trivet in this rental. I knew you had thick fabric in that box, so I grabbed it. This flag is perfect thick enough to keep the table safe. See," she tapped the wood under the flag. "No mark, it'll wash out." "Why are you so dramatic?" Dramatic. Hank leaned back, a lobster claw in his hand. "He's dead, Florence. He doesn't know what's happening. Stop overreacting." He cracked the claw with his teeth. "That badge is just a piece of metal anyway. Let the kids eat in peace." His words slammed into me. I looked down and saw Mark's badge on the deck near Brenda's chair, half buried in sand. It must have fallen when she dumped the box out. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. The stain on the flag blurred in my vision, spreading across the stars, permanent, irreversible. 3 years. 3 years of swallowing my pride. 3 years of bending over backward for my sister. 3 years of being told I should rely on family because I was a single mother who needed help. If this was family, then I'd misunderstood the word. I thought back to how we ended up here. The trip was Brenda's idea. "The cousins should bond," she'd said. "Penny needs family." My parents, Walter and Marilyn, immediately supported her, as always. "Don't be selfish, Florence. Your sister is reaching out. You should be grateful." Grateful. I was grateful when Brenda asked to use my dress 3 years ago, right after Mark died. Her boys needed access to the top-rated elementary school in my district where I taught 4th grade. Her district school was struggling. "Don't you want your nephews to have the best education?" she'd asked. So I signed the affidavit of residency. I committed fraud, swearing they lived with me. I did it because I was drowning in grief and too weak to argue. Because my parents said it was my duty. Then Brenda made sure I understood the consequences. "We're in this together," she told me sweetly 6 months later. "If anyone finds out, you'll lose your teaching license. It's perjury, Florence. They'll fire you. So let's keep it simple." And she dangled that threat over my head ever since. Anytime I pushed back, she'd remind me, "We're in the same boat. Don't rock it." And I stayed silent because I needed my job. Penny needed it. The insurance. The security. I couldn't afford to lose everything, but standing there on that balcony, staring at the flag soaked in butter, something in me didn't break. It snapped into alignment. The fear that had suffocated me for 3 years burned away, replaced with a cold, precise rage. I didn't scream again. I didn't argue. I bent down, picked up Mark's badge, brushed the sand away. My hands were steady. I placed it gently into the memory box and closed the lid over the broken latch. I walked past Brenda, past Hank and the boys, back inside. Penny was still in the kitchen, staring at her half-eaten frozen corn dog. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying while they feasted. "Come on, sweetheart," I whispered. I took the plate from her hands and set it aside. "Let's make something better." I opened the fridge, pulled out eggs and bread. Within minutes, butter was sizzling in the pan, bread crisping in the toaster, 2 sunny-side-up eggs sliding onto plates. I made Penny hot cocoa with extra marshmallows. We sat together at the table, eating our simple meal while laughter from the balcony floated in from outside. Penny looked up, cocoa on her upper lip. "Mom, yeah, baby?" I wish Aunt Lana was here. My chest tightened. Lana, my mother's cousin who loved Penny more than my own mother did. Warm, funny, kind. If she were here, none of this would have happened. "Me too," I whispered. That night, I didn't take the memory box to the beach. No candles. No waves. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the stained flag, the obscene blotching across the stars. and I made a decision. This ends now. Sleep avoided me. The clock ticked toward dawn. Every time I blinked, I saw the pot sitting on the flag. Brenda's voice echoing, "It'll wash out." But it wouldn't. The stain was already setting, deep into the fibers dot by morning. I tried blotting it with cold water. It only spread, bleeding over 3 stars, permanent, like everything Brenda ever did. I sat on the bedroom floor as sunrise crept in, the damp flag across my lap, finally willing to face what I avoided for years. This wasn't accident or carelessness. This was exploitation, calculated, deliberate. My sister didn't see me as family, just a tool. A way to get her boys into a prestigious school. A doormat she could stomp on because I was too broken to fight. And my parents? Walter and Marilyn enabled every bit of it. I opened old texts, reading them with new clarity. My mother's guilt-tripping. "Don't be selfish. Think of the boys. You need family now that Mark is gone." They used my widowhood as leverage. I imagined telling them what Brenda did to the flag. I knew exactly what they'd say. My father, "Don't make a big deal. She didn't mean harm. You're too sensitive." My mother, "That's just Brenda. Let it go. Family forgives." Except forgiveness requires remorse. Brenda had none. I looked at Penny, asleep in the other bed, curled around her stuffed rabbit. My daughter, the girl who was fed frozen food while her cousins gorged themselves. The child who was bullied and sidelined and always treated as less. Brenda's golden boys. I'd been so consumed with staying afloat, keeping my job, keeping the bills paid, keeping our lives from collapsing, that I hadn't realized how thoroughly I'd failed to shield my daughter from the people who were supposed to love her. I was finished living in survival mode. It was time to fight, but I couldn't be reckless. Brenda still held one enormous weapon over me, that residency affidavit with my signature sitting at the bottom like a ticking bomb. If I marched into the district office and confessed, I'd be terminated on the spot. My teaching license revoked. Penny and I stripped of our insurance and our stability. Brenda understood that perfectly. She was counting on it, so I needed a bigger weapon, something that would not only protect me, but obliterate her leverage in the process. For the rest of that vacation, I acted like nothing had happened. I never mentioned the flag again. When Brenda cornered me in the kitchen asking me to split the grocery bill, pretending not to remember that I'd purchased all $400 of the seafood she inhaled, I just smiled and said, "Sure, I'll Venmo you later." I never did. She didn't even ask. She assumed I was too frightened to push back, but behind my quiet smile, I was gathering everything I needed. I photographed every detail. The flag, stained and wrinkled, captured from multiple angles. Close-ups of the butter-soaked fabric, the cracked latch on the memory box, the shredded plastic she'd ripped apart, the pot still streaked with seafood residue. Then I went into the kitchen, where the paper plate still lay untouched, right where Penny had left it. The corn dog, entirely thawed now, looked even sadder in the morning light, shriveled, pale, limp. I photographed that too, centering it against the sink, overflowing with dirty dishes from their feast. The contrast told the whole story. I didn't need the photos for court. I needed them for my resolve, for the reminder that this wasn't just about me. It was about my child. Then I scrolled back through 3 years of messages from Brenda and screenshotted every single one that referenced school enrollment. Every time she'd casually typed, "The boys' classes at your school." Every hint to keep quiet. Every friendly reminder that meant stay silent or lose everything. 30 pages by the time I finished. On our drive home, 3 days before school began, Brenda's name lit up my phone. "Remember to keep quiet. New Year starts Monday. Don't screw this up. Don't let this affect the boys' education or your job. We're relying on you." I stared at her message, feeling my pulse calm instead of spike. Then I typed back, of course. See you Monday. She had no clue she'd just buried herself that afternoon. Once we were unpacked and Penny was absorbed in her new markers and folders, I made the most important phone call of my career. Teachers Union. This is Diane. Hi, I said, my throat tight. My name is Florence Fairfax. I'm a fourth grade teacher in the district, and I need to speak with a representative immediately. It's urgent. A pause. What kind of situation? I'm being blackmailed by a family member into committing residency fraud, I said, and I need protection before I report it. Another pause longer. Then, can you come in tomorrow morning at 9? Yes, I breathed. I'll be there. That night, sleep danced just out of reach again. But this time, it wasn't grief shackling my lungs. It was adrenaline. Terror threaded with exhilaration. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't the cornered animal. I was the one stalking the path forward. The next morning, I dropped Penny at Aunt Lana's. She took one look at me and gathered me into her arms. What's wrong, sweetheart? I can't say yet, I whispered. But I need you to watch Penny today, please. Of course. She cupped my cheeks in her gentle, weathered hands. Whatever storm you're walking through, you're stronger than you believe. I nodded, swallowed my tears, and drove to the union office. The building was squat and brick, tucked beside the sprawling district admin complex. I'd driven past it hundreds of times without thinking. Now, pulling into the lot minutes before 9, my palms were slick on the wheel. This was the threshold. There would be no going back. I collected my folder 30 pages of messages, photos of the pulverized memory box and stained flag, screenshots of every threat, and walked inside. Before fear could anchor my feet, the lobby smelled like burnt coffee and sun-baked carpet. A woman with steel gray hair looked up. Double quotes, Florence Fairfax. That's me. Diane Miller will see you. Second door on the left. I walked down a narrow hallway lined with leaning stacks of file boxes. The door was open. Inside sat a woman in her mid-50s, glasses hanging from a beaded chain, surrounded by legal texts. Miss Fairfax. She stood, shook my hand. I'm Diane. Have a seat. I lowered myself into the chair, clutching my folder like buoyant debris in open water. You said you're being blackmailed regarding residency fraud, she said. Start at the beginning. So I did. I told her about Mark's death, the grief that hollowed me out, the financial fear that made me cling to my job. Brenda's request, the affidavit, the moment she weaponized it, the years of threats, the vacation, the flag, the butter stains and broken latch, the words Hank had tossed at me. He's dead. He doesn't know. By the time I finished, my hands were shaking. I slid the photos across her desk. She broke into my memory box, I murmured. She used his casket flag as a potholder, and when I confronted her, she said I was being dramatic. Diane studied the picture of the grease-stained stars. Her jaw flexed. And she's held the fraud over you since? Yes, I handed her the text printouts. Constantly. Every time she wanted something. Diane flipped page after page, her expression darkening. When she finally set them down, she took off her glasses and exhaled sharply. Miss Fairfax, she said firmly, I need you to understand something. You and your sister are not in the same boat. You are the victim of domestic coercion. The words stunned me. What? She exploited your grief and finances to force you into fraud, then blackmailed you with the consequences. That is coercion. You're not a criminal, you're a whistleblower. But I signed the affidavit, I whispered. I lied. Under duress. And you are voluntarily coming forward. She tapped the photos. And this is desecration of a fallen public servant's flag. The district will not take this lightly. A fragile spark lit in my chest. So, I won't lose my job? Not only will you keep it, Diane said, eyes blazing, I believe we can guarantee full immunity. I blinked. Immunity? Yes, here's our plan. She leaned in. I will personally walk you into a meeting with the HR director. We will present everything. We will show that you're a widow, coerced by a sibling, coming forward voluntarily. We will demand protection, and if they refuse, her smile was razor sharp, then I will ensure that every news outlet in the state learns that the district punished a firefighter's widow for being blackmailed. Trust me, the PR fallout alone would terrify them. Something unfurled in my chest, a bloom instead of a break. When can we meet with HR? Today, Diane said. I'll make the call. Get yourself some coffee while I arrange it. I drifted into the break room, poured coffee I didn't drink, and stared out at the parking lot. 3 years of fear. 3 years of swallowing everything because I believed I had no choice, but I did. I always had. Diane reappeared 20 minutes later. We're on for 2. Bring the photos of the flag. The HR building gleamed like a glass monolith. Nothing like the union's worn walls. Diane and I waited in a conference room overlooking the football field. When the HR director entered, I recognized her immediately, Patricia Morrison. Tall, crisp, flawlessly put together. With eyes that missed nothing, she flipped through my folder in silence before finally closing it. Miss Fairfax. She said, this is quite a situation. My stomach dropped. I know I should have. She lifted a hand. I'm not criticizing you. I'm horrified by what you've endured. She tapped the folder. Your sister perpetrated the fraud, then exploited you. And this, she slid out the photo of the stained flag. This is disgraceful. Diane cleared her throat, which is why we're proposing full immunity for Miss Fairfax. She keeps her job and license. In return, she provides everything needed for the district to pursue the actual offenders. Patricia considered it. Immunity sets a precedent that protects victims, Diane countered. And Patricia, think about the optics. A widow, a fallen firefighter, 8 years of loyal teaching. Do you really want headlines saying the district punished her for coming forward? The silence stretched out, then Patricia opened her desk drawer and pulled out a legal pad. Here's what I can offer, she said. Complete immunity. Retention of your position and license. In exchange, full cooperation. And no public discussion until the investigation concludes. Done, I said instantly. Then I'll draft the agreement within 48 hours. 2 days. Perfect timing. Diane and I shook hands with Patricia and walked out into the sun. Welcome to freedom. Diane said. I couldn't speak. I drove to Lana's, collected Penny, watched her curled on the sofa eating apple slices. Sweet, safe. How did it go? Lana whispered in the kitchen. It went well, I said. Really well? Things are changing. She squeezed my hand. Good. You deserve it. That night, after tucking Penny into bed, I sat before the memory box. The flag was still stained. That stain would never lift. But maybe that wasn't a wound anymore. Maybe it was a reminder of what Brenda had taken and what I had reclaimed out my voice. My courage. My future. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait for Monday. By Friday morning, the shift in the air felt electric. Or maybe it was just my anticipation. I signed the immunity agreement in Patricia's office, her pen stamping the district seal beside my own. It's official, she said. On Monday, the children will be flagged. When your sister arrives, security will inform her they've been disenrolled and must return to their home district. She can't talk her way out of it. Oh, she'd try, Patricia said dryly. But the evidence is overwhelming. I nodded. Thank you. I walked out of the building feeling lighter than I had in years. The weekend stretched ahead, 2 days of pretending everything was normal, while the machinery behind the scenes prepared to snap shut. I wanted to call Lana, to tell her everything. But I waited. I wanted to see it happen. To witness my sister's fall with my own eyes dash finally dot, so I focused on Penny. We laid out her supplies, pressed her first day dress blue with white flowers, the last dress Mark ever bought her. Too small now, but she insisted on wearing it because Dottie picked it. Excited for 4th grade? I asked Dot. She shrugged. Will the boys be there? The question gutted me. Those boys, Brenda's sons, who had ignored her, mocked her. Eaten lavishly while she ate frozen scraps. Just focus on having a good year. Sweetheart, I said softly. Dot. She nodded, but fear clouded her eyes. She was bracing herself for another year of invisibility. Not anymore, baby. Never again. Dot. Sunday was calm. Spaghetti, garlic bread, a movie. She fell asleep against my arm, and I carried her to bed, tucking her in gently. Everything I'd done was for her, to give her a world where kindness wasn't optional. Dot. My phone buzzed. Dot. Brenda. Dot. Tomorrow. Dropping boys off at 7:15. Come greet us at the gate so parents see we're close. And don't look miserable like at the beach. Smile. I stared at the screen. This was the final performance. If I acted normally, she'd walk right into the trap. If I flinched, if I tipped my hand, she'd sense it instantly and keep the boys home. Dot. So I typed what I'd typed for 3 years. Dot. Of course. I'll be there. Dot. Morning came cool and crisp as I drove toward the school. My hands were steady on the wheel. Penny sat beside me, her backpack covered in the cheerful patches I'd sewn on the weekend. She hummed under her breath, blissfully unaware of the storm that was just minutes from breaking. Mom, do you think Mrs. Patterson will be my teacher again this year? She asked. Maybe, sweetheart, I answered, keeping my tone calm even as anticipation curled tight in my ribs. We'll find out soon. I dropped her off early before the chaos, before the confrontation, because she deserved a normal first day. By 7:15, she was safely inside, registered under my real address, her record spotless and fully legitimate. Then I parked in the teacher's lot, coffee cooling untouched in the holder, and fixed my gaze on the main entrance, the gate where students scanned their IDs to enter. Dot. At 7:28, I saw it. Brenda's oversized UV slid into the drop-off lane with the confidence of a woman who believed consequences were things that happened to other people. In my rearview mirror, I watched her lean back toward the boys, probably giving some last-minute instruction about behavior or remembering their homework. Dot. The boys climbed out. Marcus swaggered with the same entitlement he always carried, the entitlement he'd been fed since birth. Daniel hovered a half step behind him, unsure but obedient. I checked my watch. 7:29. Marcus reached the scanner first. He pulled out his I did the same card he'd used for the past 3 years and swiped it in one smooth motion. Red light. Access denied flashed across the screen. He frowned and tried again. Red. Access denied. Daniel stepped forward. Swiped. Red. Access denied. Confusion rippled around them. Brenda got out of the SUV, pushing her sunglasses up like she had every right to be irritated. That was when Officer Reynolds came striding out of the administrative building. School. Resource officers are their own breed. Not quite police, not quite staff, just authority incarnate. Reynolds was tall, solid, a veteran whose uniform looked like it had been ironed into his skin. Parents in the drop-off line watched him, their whispers rising like static. Phones already half-dash raised. Principal Hendricks walked out behind him with 2 admin staff. Her expression had gone full granite, no apologies, no negotiation. Monsieur, I'm going to need you to step back from the gate. Reynolds said loudly enough for half the parking lot to hear. It wasn't a request. Brenda's face flushed. Excuse me? These are my sons. There's obviously some kind of computer error. There's no error, Principal Hendricks said, her voice slicing through the morning air. These students have been removed from our system due to residency fraud. Their presence here constitutes trespassing. You must remove them immediately. The silence that followed was electric. Parents froze mid-step. Students whispered. The boys stared at the gate, cheeks flushing. That's absurd, Brenda snapped. I have documentation. Your documentation was falsified, Hendricks replied. Officer Reynolds is here to ensure this is handled peacefully. Please collect your children and vacate the premises. I want to talk to someone. I want to speak to Florence Fairfax. She vouched. Mrs. Fairfax is unavailable, an admin worker said smoothly. She held out a large manila envelope with district letterhead. This is for you. Brenda snatched it. Around her, the entire drop-off line had stalled, every set of eyes locked on the unfolding scene. Marcus's jaw was tight with embarrassment. Daniel looked lost. Brenda tore open the envelope. I couldn't see her expression, but I saw her posture shift rage, stiffening into something brittle like she'd hit a wall she didn't understand. Inside was the disenrollment notice drafted by the district's legal team with just enough input from my union rep to make it devastating. It laid out everything in clinical detail: the false affidavit, the 3 years of fraudulent enrollment, the financial cost, and finally, the bill, $15,000 per year. 3 years. $45,000 total. Full payment due in 30 days, or the district would file suit. Wage garnishment. Property liens. Action against both legal guardians. Brenda's scream split the air. This is insane. You can't do this. The documentation has been verified, Hendricks said calmly. Officer Reynolds stepped closer, hand hovering near his radio. You need to leave now. I'll sue. I'll call every news station. That is your right, Hendricks answered coolly. However, you are currently trespassing. You have 2 minutes to collect your children, or Officer Reynolds will escort you off the property. Brenda's emotions flickered: rage, disbelief, the frantic calculation of someone realizing the game was over. She grabbed the boys by their arms and hauled them toward the SUV. Marcus barked questions. Daniel looked like he might cry. The engine roared. Tires shrieked as she peeled out of the lot. I took a sip of cold coffee and let out a slow breath. The trap had closed. The rest of the school day unfolded almost normally. I taught lessons. I smiled at students. I ate lunch in the lounge and talked curriculum like any other Monday. People whispered, glanced at me, speculated, but didn't ask Dot after the final bell. I picked up Penny. She bounced toward me, chattering about her new teacher, a friend she'd reconnected with, and an art project starting tomorrow. Can we get ice cream? She asked. Not today, sweetheart. We're going to visit Aunt Lana. Her eyes lit up. Really? On a school night? Really? Aunt Lana's home was familiar, comforting, impossibly full of summer flowers. She'd been more present in my life than my own mother for years, especially after Mark died. She opened the door before we reached the steps, silver hair pinned back. Smile warm. There's my favorite girl, she said, pulling Penny into a hug. I'm your only girl, Penny giggled. That makes you my favorite by default. Now go check the cookies cooling in the kitchen. Make sure I didn't ruin them. Penny sprinted inside. Aunt Lana's smile faded when she looked at me. You've got that look. What look? The storm is coming, look. Come inside. We sat at her kitchen table while Penny nibbled cookies and colored in the living room. I told her everything: the beach trip, the flag, the fraud, the immunity, the trap, the fallout. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she exhaled softly. You're scared, she said. Double quotes, yes. Of what comes next? Yes. She reached across the table, gripping my hand. Her fingers were strong despite arthritis shaping her knuckles. Florence, you did the right thing. The only thing. And whatever comes tonight, you stand your ground. Understand? I do. That little girl in there deserves a mother who doesn't let people walk all over her. She deserves to learn that strength isn't something to apologize for. My throat tightened. I know. Then go home. Face them. And don't you dare apologize. She squeezed my hand until it hurt. You're Mark's wife. Stronger than they'll ever be. I nodded. Double quotes, Penny can stay here tonight, she added. No matter how late things go. I'll take her to school if I need to. Thank you. Nothing to thank me for. That child is family. I kissed Penny goodbye. She barely noticed and drove home as the sun bled into the horizon. The house was silent. I'd left the porch light off deliberately. I wanted them to know I was home, but I wanted them to have to knock, to wait, to feel the shift. I went to my bedroom and gathered the papers I prepared the day before. 30 pages of exported message logs, timestamps, metadata, every demand Brenda made, every threat, every guilt trip, every petty cruelty. I'd highlighted the important pieces, added notes, organized everything meticulously, then I retrieved the wooden shadow box. It was heavier than it looked, heavy with memory. Inside were Mark's badge, his medals, and the folded burial flag. The stain had darkened into a permanent Marcus scar that wouldn't fade. I'd tried cleaning it once, but it persisted. Some scars do. I closed the box and placed it in the living room beside the printed messages, then sat on the couch and waited. They arrived at exactly 7, like a courtroom summons. I heard the vehicles first, engines rumbling with indignation, doors slamming hard. The doorbell rang twice, followed by pounding. I rose slowly, smoothed my shirt, took one steady breath. Then I opened the door. Walter stood in front, face red with fury. Marilyn hovered behind him, lips tight and thin. Brenda looked like she'd been crying for hours, mascara streaked down her cheeks. Hair tangled, eyes frantic, and Hank stood beside her, radiating the kind of rage that made rooms feel smaller. You traitor, he spat, shoving past Walter. You vindictive, selfish. Come in, I said evenly, stepping aside as if they weren't already barging through. We should do this inside. They stormed into my living room like a hostile takeover, voices overlapping, accusations flying. Brenda dropped onto my couch in a full collapse, sobbing loudly. Marilyn pointed a shaking finger at me like she was invoking a curse. Walter yelled about family loyalty, about betrayal, about choosing sides. And Hank was practically vibrating with fury. I'll destroy you, he bellowed, leaning so close I could smell the coffee on his breath. You think you're clever? Your signature is on that affidavit, too. I'll sue you for complicity, for fraud, everything. I'll rip your life apart. You'll lose your job, your house, I let him shout. I let all of them shout. I stood there unmoving, letting the noise break against me until it began running out of momentum, anger, deflating into ragged breathing. Finally, I stepped toward the coffee table, fingers curled around the stack of documents I had assembled with meticulous care. Sit down, I said quietly. Something in my tone cold, uncheckable, froze them mid-breath. Sit down. They obeyed. Brenda and Marilyn sank onto the couch. Walter collapsed into the armchair, and Hank hovered by the fireplace like a storm barely leashed. I dropped the stack of papers onto the table with a deliberate thud. 30 pages, I said. Every message from the entire period of your fraud. I flipped through the pages. Texts where Brenda pressured me to sign the affidavit. Messages where she threatened to turn our parents against me if I didn't comply. Screenshots of every manipulation, every guilt trip, every lie, every time she weaponized my grief. Brenda's crying cut off like someone had pressed a mute button. And this, I added, lifting the wooden memory box and placing it on the table. The sound echoed too loudly in the suddenly hushed room. I opened it slowly, removing the triangular case holding Mark's burial flag. Even in the dim lamplight, the dark grease stain smeared across the white stripe glared back like an accusation. "Do you see this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the fire building in my chest. "This is what you did. You took my husband's burial flag, the one draped over his coffin, handed to me by his commanding officer, and used it as a potholder for your seafood feast." I set it down with painful care. 20 pounds of king crab and lobster that I paid $400 for, I continued, while my daughter ate a frozen corn dog. Marilyn's face drained of color. "Florence, we didn't mean don't." The word cracked through the room. "Don't you dare tell me what you meant. You knew exactly what this flag was. You just didn't care." I lifted the paperwork again. "I have an immunity agreement from the district," I said. "Filed through my union. I reported the fraud myself. Legally, I'm in the clear." Hank stepped toward me. "That doesn't mean I'm not finished." I met his eyes, and whatever he saw there made him stop mid-step. "If you try to sue me, threaten me, smear my reputation, or drag me into your mess, I will hand every one of these messages to the police and the district attorney." Silence punched the air flat. "Blackmail is a felony," I said softly. "Forcing someone to commit fraud through threats? That's textbook. And considering the fraud involved public school funding, the DA will be salivating. I have timestamps, context, a pattern. I let the consequences settle like dust in their lungs. So here's your choice," I said. "Pay the $45,000 the district is demanding. Avoid the lien. Walk away quietly." Brenda let out a strangled, broken sound. "Or," I continued, "try to fight me. Sue me. Push this further. And I will bury you in evidence that ends with felony charges. Wage garnishment will feel like mercy compared to prison." The room felt still enough to crack. Hank's expression faltered into horrified disbelief. Brenda cried again small, hopeless sobs. Walter looked ancient. Marilyn looked like she no longer recognized her daughter. "Get out of my house," I said. None of them moved. "Get out." They left in thick, shuffling silence, Brenda stumbling, Hank holding her upright, Walter and Marilyn moving like ghosts. They didn't look back. I closed the door and locked it. Then I went to the memory box, folded the flag back into place, and set it gently inside. My hands trembled as adrenaline finally surged through the numbness. I sat on the couch and let myself shake. I'd burned every bridge set fire to the entire rotten structure, but I had survived it. And I had won. The house felt changed in the days that followed lighter, like someone had pulled a weight off the rafters. I moved through the rooms, noticing details I had stopped seeing. The way morning light warmed the kitchen tiles, the sound of birds picking at seeds in the yard, the quiet absence of dread in my stomach. Penny came home from Aunt Lana's full of excitement, chatting about cookies and knitting lessons like her brief stay had been a vacation. Children were resilient, perhaps because she trusted me enough not to be afraid. 7 days later, Brenda called. I almost ignored it. Almost. I put the phone on speaker while chopping vegetables. "Florence." Her voice sounded scraped raw. "We're selling the car." I stayed silent. "The Audi," she said. "We're selling it. And Hank's truck. And borrowing from his parents. We have to pay. We don't have a choice." "No," I said softly. "You don't?" A long, ragged pause. "The boys are enrolled at Riverside Elementary," she whispered. "It's not like your district. Riverside, the school people committed fraud to escape. Crowded, underfunded, rough. I'm sorry you're going through this." I said, and I meant it in the way you feel sorry for someone who walks into traffic. "Are you?" Brenda's voice cracked. Are you really? Yes, but I'm more sorry about what you did to Penny and to Mark's memory. So that's it. This doesn't change anything. Don't call me again, I said calmly. Don't text me. Don't send messages through mom or dad. Don't show up at my house or school. We're done, Brenda. You can't just cut us out. I can. I am. Goodbye. I hung up, blocked her, blocked Hank, blocked Walter and Marilyn. The knife felt clean and decisive in my hand as I kept chopping. The next day, Walter emailed my work sense. I blocked him everywhere else asking for a family meeting. He used words like overreacting and forgiveness and we're still your parents, as if genetics erase cruelty. I deleted it, emptied the trash, returned to grading. 2 weeks passed in silence. Peaceful silence, rebuilding silence. Then a letter arrived from the district this time. Penny had been accepted into the gifted and talented program based on her test scores and teacher recommendations, hard-earned, honest, hers alone. I taped the letter to the fridge. When she came home, she saw it instantly and squealed. I got in. Mom, I got in. You did, I said proudly. All by yourself. She threw her arms around me. Can we celebrate? Of course. What do you want? She thought carefully. Can we invite Aunt Lana over and make that fancy cheese seafood thing you showed me? The lobster. Something? Lobster thermidor? Yeah, that. I laughed. Deal. I'll call Aunt Lana. That evening, the three of us sat at the kitchen table, 3 plates, 3 glasses, 3 people who chose each other. I brought out individual ramekins of lobster thermidor, bubbling under a golden crust. Fancy, Aunt Lana said, impressed. Where'd you learn this? Well, I said, setting the dishes down. If I paid $400 for seafood I never got to taste, I figured I might as well learn to cook it. Penny dove in with gusto. Lana savored each bite, and I sat there, eating real food with people who truly loved me, not a single frozen corn dog in sight. Aunt Lana raised her glass. To Penny for being brilliant. To Mom for being brave, Penny echoed. They both looked at me. I lifted my glass, feeling something warm expand in my chest, something like hope. To family, I said softly. The real kind. We clinked glasses. Penny giggled at the soft chime. Later, after Lana left and Penny worked on homework, I washed dishes in warm, golden evening light. Dust danced in the sunbeams. For the first time in years, my home felt peaceful, not empty, but steady. Peace wasn't the absence of conflict. I realized it was the presence of people who loved without taking. Not the quiet of fear, but the quiet of safety. I'd spent years as a widow, and more years as the family scapegoat, the one who held everything together while her own needs went ignored. The reliable one, the forgiving one, the one who believed love meant shrinking herself smaller and smaller. Not anymore. I dried my hands and glanced at the mantel where Mark's flag rested in the shadow box. The grease stain was still visible, a dark scar across white cloth. Some would say I should have tried harder to preserve it, to keep it perfect. Some would insist family was worth forgiving endlessly, worth sacrificing yourself for. They were wrong. That stain was the price of my freedom. The mark of the moment everything changed. Proof I had finally learned the lesson Mark tried to teach me, that self-respect, dignity, and my daughter's safety were worth more than polite silence. I had burned the bridge, paid the cost, and I would walk away from the ashes without looking back. On the mantel, the flag caught the last light of the evening, its scar a permanent reminder of what I refused to lose again.